Welcome everybody to the Electoral Area Services Committee of Wednesday, April 14th. And I'll call this meeting to order. We have a quorum. So we would have the adoption of the public agenda.
Mr. Chair, I would like to move adoption of the agenda with the exception that item 2 be pulled in its entirety from this agenda until next month so that the staff can provide more information. Otherwise, we're going to be sitting for an hour with me asking questions about the application, and it's a major application in Area D. It affects our OCP, in my opinion. I need to talk to the planning staff about what's going on here.
Thank you.
You can't just pop a major thing onto an agenda a couple of days before the meeting and expect it to move through. So please pull item 2.
Mr. Chair, if I can add here, this is what we bring items to OPLM meetings. The board hasn't delegated authority to individual directors to go over applications with individual directors, that we bring them to committee for debate. So I'm not certain what the director wants here, but we don't have the authority to meet behind closed doors.
Mr. CAO, I don't want to discuss it at this meeting because I'm not prepared to debate it, because there's a lot of missing information, in my opinion, and I need to find out more. I'm not asking to debate it with anyone or do it behind closed doors. I want to find out exactly what's the composition of this application and if it requires an OCP amendment, and I'm not prepared to discuss it today. I'm not ready to discuss it today. I haven't got enough information. So I continue to request that item 2 be pulled, please, till next month.
So again, Mr. Chair, just on the premise that all directors then will not be provided information on an equal basis. And that is the issue here.
Maybe I'm going to get my own information. I'm going to research my OCP, but I haven't had time to research it. I need to go to my OCP and look at what it says as a guidance for this, and there's no mention of it in this report, so I need to be prepared to debate it when it does come up at the committee, and that won't be till next month at this time.
Yeah, I have no issue with that. That's fine. You can defer, pull it. That's fine. But yeah, I'm just speaking to the premise of the board and committees is given information equally on a fair, level playing ground. I totally respect if you want more time to research on your own. I get it. I'm just speaking towards staff providing more information to one director to the other. So that's fine. I'm just trying to get some clarity.
Chairman, one other option you could consider is when this item comes up, just simply defer it. When you get
I just want it pulled from the agenda. It's not right to only give a director 2 or 3 days notice of a major development in their area. That's not fair. I want it pulled altogether. I'm not debating it.
Okay, I think we have the gist of what it is you're asking. You would like that issue pulled from the adoption of the public agenda. Does that need to be a motion, or do we just do it?
Well, it needs to be a motion for sure. I mean,
Mr. Chairman, the motion for, I believe right now, is Director Lee to adopt the agenda with the exception of number 2.
Yes, that's it.
So there is a motion for.
Okay, so there's a motion. Is there a seconder?
I'll second it.
Okay.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Say again.
I think there was a question there, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead, Norma.
Look, I'm more than happy to defer this when it comes up, but if we're going to pull it in its entirety, my question is, would this naturally, from a staff perspective, appear on next month's agenda?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And I'm talking about the mid-month meeting, not the first meeting of May. The mid-month, the second meeting in May.
We only meet monthly for EASC, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so on the agenda, is there anyone opposed?
Sorry, Jim, I thought we were voting on this one motion to
no,
move to. I had one other addition to the agenda, please?
Okay, so, all right, yeah, so we should take it first before we adopt the agenda. So what is your addition?
I would just like a brief oral update from staff on where we're at with the request for a report on long-term planning updates for all of the rural areas. I think that was a direction a couple months ago, and I'd just love to know if that's being worked on.
I can quickly address that, Mr. Chair, if you want. That will come, I'm going to say, excuse me, this is April. Sorry.
I was going to say we could, if it's adopted, then you could speak to it at, I guess, new business.
Okay, well, the answer is likely at the probably the June meeting.
Okay, so we don't really have to discuss it. All right, all those in favor of adoption of the public agenda as amended?
No, anyone opposed?
Or sorry, that's right. We're looking for opposition. Anybody opposed? Seeing none, we'll move on. We have a public agenda. So now we have.
Move the public agenda as amended.
I think that's
Okay.
Already been done.
We just did that, yeah. Okay, so then we move on to petitions and delegations, item D. And we have bylaw number 9495, OCP and rezoning application for Shellink. We have a delegation of Michael Stonke, Jean Stonke, George Murdoch, and Mark Neiswander, who are residents of Quadra Island, and they would like to make a presentation regarding the public hearing process for bylaw 9495, the OCP, and the rezoning application for Shellink. So I would invite the 4 members of the delegation to maybe quickly introduce yourself. We don't need a resume, just hi, I'm here, and whoever's going to speak first. The process for delegations is that we generally tell a delegation that they get a 10-minute presentation. And then at the end of the delegation, directors will be given the opportunity to ask questions of the delegation. And there will be no motions made or anything of that type after the delegation. That will not happen until the new business section at the end of the agenda. So is there a main spokesperson?
Hi, Jim, it's Michael. Hi, Jim, it's Michael. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine, Michael. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. I'm actually going to start today, Jen.
Okay, good morning, Jean.
Good morning.
Yeah,
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Jean Stonke. As Jim said, I'm a resident of Quadra Island. And the group of us is here today to impress upon our regional directors the necessity of having a full in-person public hearing regarding the Shellink Gowland Harbor Views subdivision proposal. I believe this application is one which cannot be adequately addressed with a virtual public hearing. Just because it can be done virtually does not mean it should be. We have all seen technical difficulties with virtual meetings. We have also seen a noticeable reduction in public participation in virtual public hearings, certainly compared to our history on Quadra Island of large turnouts for in-person hearings. In some cases lately, there have been no attendees to these virtual hearings, and I believe virtual hearings are an impediment to representation and participation. This proposal itself is not a small-scale neighborhood issue. It is a complicated proposal involving multiple amendments to both our OCP and our zoning bylaw. The proposed changes have serious impacts on the entire community. Most of us will be affected by this proposal and should have the right to have our voices heard, whether we are computer literate or not. This, I believe, is the fourth iteration of this particular subdivision proposal. Few people really understand anymore clearly what is actually being proposed. Before any public hearing is scheduled, I think it would be helpful for the proponents to conduct a public information meeting with full details of what is being proposed at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Are you going to speak, Michael?
No, Mark's going to speak next.
Hi, everyone. This is Mark Niswander. Thank you guys for being here to listen to us. And here's what I have to say about this. Well, it took 4 of us and eventually going to my daughter's computer to make this test meeting that I'd made work. Kind of makes my point about the inappropriateness of a virtual meeting about this issue on Quadra. This is the largest development yet proposed on Quadra with great impacts in many ways. So it's important that all Quadra Islanders are able to participate. Meeting over a computer does not do this, and that may include me if my daughter's computer is tied up in a lecture. There are a lot of questions around how Mr. Shelnick left Denman Island and ended up here on Quadra. Many view this as somewhat shady. Anything less than a full and open public meeting will just enhance these suspicions. This development proposal has been going on and has been in the works for many years, so let's do it right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Michael Stonky.
George was also.
I'm going to speak now, Jim.
Okay, Michael.
This is from the BC Local Government Act, Section 465, Public Hearings. At the public hearing, all persons who believe that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw must be afforded a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaw that is the subject of the hearing. The Shelling proposal has been an important and contentious issue for more than a decade. It has been almost proposed and then withdrawn at least 3 times. It's been here so long that the last time it was before you, you debated whether or not Mr. Shelling should be required to submit a completely new application. I'm confident you are aware of the importance of this proposal for our community. A virtual hearing is not a reasonable opportunity. Last week, as Mark said, we four members of this delegation joined a practice virtual meeting with Edith Watson in order to prepare for our presentation. None of us has previously enjoyed a virtual experience. Imagine, if you will, how that went. Eventually, we got it, and we all had the same response. This proves our point. There is no way that this would work. A virtual meeting for the Shelling application would be impossible, and it's absurd to think otherwise. Public hearings on Quadra Island are often attended by more than 200 people. An in-person public hearing for this proposal would be one of those. Many people on our island don't have cell phones, and they don't have computers, they don't text, and they don't Skype. But they attend public hearings, and sometimes they stand at the microphone. They have an interest in property, and they have the right to be heard. Our request is that this proposal not be considered without completion of an in-person public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, what about George? Is George going to speak?
Hello?
George,
Can
hello.
you hear me?
Yes, if you can
Hello.
speak a little louder, it would be helpful.
Okay, I will do that. How's that? Any better?
That's perfect.
Okay. I think some of the points that I'm about to make have already been stated, but I will read what I've prepared. This is a very contentious proposal, and its potential impact on Quadra can't be overstated. Consequently, before the board makes a decision regarding Mr. Schilling's application, it's essential that Quadra residents feel that their concerns have been heard. The process has to be perceived as fair and transparent, and there's no substitute for an in-person hearing. People's views and concerns are presented in public. Although the province has asked local governments to proceed with hearings where possible, during COVID restrictions, the law does require that all parties have access. That is simply not the case here on Quadra Island using internet technology. A virtual hearing would be unavailable to many residents because of a lack of good internet access and unfamiliarity with the technology. Even for those with good access, Teams, Zoom, and Skype require learning and are often disrupted by technical issues. And in fact, my audio has dropped several times during this session. It appears likely that an in-person hearing may be possible in the fall. Considering the time that has already elapsed since this proposal was first brought forward, and I can't even remember how long that is now, at least 10 years, it would be reasonable to wait until then. So thank you for hearing us.
Okay, thank you, George. Okay, are there any questions from the directors of the delegation?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Nova, go ahead.
Thank you. And I really appreciate the time it's taken all four of you, both today and last week, in figuring this out. I completely understand the concerns that you bring forward, and it's shared certainly by residents on Cortes Island. They're very valid, and I do understand the scope and the magnitude of the Schilling proposal and that it needs every opportunity for really careful consideration and input. I also would not be surprised if mass gathering restrictions carry on for a couple of years. We don't know. We are in a complete unknown situation, but the variants and the variants on variants, it may well be a very long time. The vaccines aren't getting all the variants, and as variants continue to morph, it might be quite a while. And so my quandary is that we also do need to be able to do business in this time of disruption, in this time of COVID. And I don't mind putting this off a few months, but I don't think it's responsible to put it off a few years, which may be the situation we're faced with. So my question to the delegation is, if we are in a position of unprofessionally being able to put it off sort of indefinitely, can you imagine a scenario where we could follow the provincial health guidelines and do a public hearing in a good way? And to that end, I'll just share with you, on Cortes, there was an application of real significant import to the community, not of the same magnitude, but the biggest that we had seen here in a very, very long time, that was for an affordable housing development, and it needed to receive rezoning prior to submitting a proposal to BC Housing. And so there was a time sensitivity to it, and the community was very much in support. In fact, we didn't receive one piece of negative input, but equally it was important that people really got heard. And one consideration that was given was to set up the hall in such a way that members of the public could come in one at a time into the hall and share in person to a camera or to Edith or whoever was there in person their thoughts, and then walk out the other door and the next person would come in. It's certainly much less valuable than being able to hear your neighbors and then, respond to those thoughts and have an iterative conversation. But I'm just asking you to be creative with us. Is there a way you could imagine doing a public hearing that would meet Quadra's needs if these public health orders carry on for a long time? Because I don't think it's valuable for us to get in debate with whether we like or don't like this proposal. I gather you might have significant concerns, but if you really loved it and really wanted to proceed, you might be a little less cautious. But either which way, how can we give these proposals the due professional consideration that we need if this is where we're at for a long time? Thank you.
This is Mark Niswander. May I speak to this delegation?
You may.
Sure.
You may.
Okay, well,
go ahead.
Thank you, Nova. That was pretty insightful what you said there, and I see that as legitimate. as well. First off, why don't we wait and see what happens? Are we in a good position to have our standard meetings in the fall? If we're not, maybe something that, like what you suggested, would be reasonable. But let's cross that bridge when we get to it. Let's look forward to perhaps being able to do a legitimate meeting in the fall. And then at that time, the delegation and other people interested on Quadra can come up with something maybe representing what you suggested on Quadra, so we can have at least as a quasi-public meeting. But let's cross that bridge when we get to it. How does that sound?
This is Michael. Can I speak on this too?
Yes, thank you, Mark. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I think we have a great big, huge grass area at Rebecca Spit. And if we have to, if we have to hold a public meeting on this, because public meetings are about discourse and about community, that we set up a stage and we hold it outside. Thanks.
Okay, so.
Okay, maybe I'll put my 2 bits worth in.
Okay, go ahead, George.
Okay. First off, I think it would be reasonable to wait until at least September and see what happens. We don't want to run it if it seems apparent at that time that it's going to be unlikely to hold a conventional public hearing. Then we want to do something that allows people to be outdoors and participate. So it would have to probably take place in September when we have good weather still. And I think the Rebecca Spit's probably not the right place to do it. I think it would still be taking place at the community hall, where there are the resources to probably put a large screen on the outside of the building where people can be outside and watch the proceedings inside, and also to provide audio outside so that people can hear what's being said. But, that's a possible solution. But I think the essential thing is that people see this as being upfront. When you write in a letter, it goes on a file somewhere and nobody knows who said what, nobody knows who wrote. And it's really essential, I think, if irregardless of how the board's decision on this application goes, if it's not perceived to be fair and above board and transparent, you could potentially have an insurrection on your hands here. So I think that that there are probably alternative solutions to a proper public hearing, but they would have to be available to anybody concerned and held in public. So that's my 2 bits worth on that subject.
Okay, thank you, George. Are there further questions from directors?
I have my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brenda, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the delegation for their presentation this morning. We're not just about business, we're about public service. We are representing the public and what the public wants, and it sounds like the public wants an open public meeting. I know that all 3 directors that would be attending this public hearing are eligible anyway to have the vaccine or have had the vaccine. I get mine tomorrow and my first shot. So, the directors will be safe enough to go to an open public. And if there's an opportunity for people who are not yet safe to go to open public, or they don't feel safe, they could have some system set up by planning to offer them an opportunity to participate as well. But I don't see the need for speed on this one, since it's been 10 years since they originally applied, and the application has changed and morphed several times, and the directors need to hear from people. Our our track record for these for these virtual meetings, public hearings has been very, our response rate has been really sketchy. Haven't heard from many people at public hearings. Sometimes we don't hear from anybody except the proponent. So it's really a big failure, in my opinion, to do it that way. And the law says that we may do it virtually. It doesn't say we must do it virtually. And so I agree with the delegation that we should put this off till at least September. By that time, most people will be vaccinated and we will be able to conduct a public hearing safely for most of the people that want to come to the open public. I'm dying for the day when I can see everybody. I miss everybody. So I would totally support the delegation's request.
Okay, thank you very much, Brenda. Are there any further questions of the delegation? For a second time, are there any further questions of the delegation? Okay, well, I would like to thank you, Mark, George, Michael, Jean, all of you for taking the time to participate in this meeting and having gone, extra mile to have done a test meeting with our corporate services department to try to make it work. We all know that there are problems with the electronic meetings, and we're certainly aware of it. We experience it ourselves. So it's heartening to hear from the public themselves that, yes, they feel that, it's a difficult situation for us to deal with. And it's a very difficult decision for us to make. But we will have to make a decision, and we will make a decision today. So I guess having said that, I would just like to thank you for coming, and we'll move on to the next item at this point.
Okay, thank you very much for hearing us out, and I'll get back to planting my garden.
Yes,
Okay, good luck.
Thank you all.
Give him a second to leave, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
All good?
You'll have to tell me.
Yeah.
That happens.
Yeah, they're all gone.
Okay, thank you very much. So could we have a motion to receive the report of the delegation?
Second.
Seconder?
Second.
Okay, anybody opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, next thing is adoption of previous minutes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Is there a seconder?
I would just like one little correction, please. In the minutes, okay, thank you. At the last meeting, as you recall, maybe my computer was kaput at home halfway through the meeting, or 3/4 of the way through. And
Right.
The minutes record that I was not present at the meeting, that I left the meeting and then came back, which is not the case. I was in front of my screen the whole time, listening and trying to say something, but I didn't leave the meeting, and I was there for the whole of that meeting. And as soon as that meeting was over, I headed downtown to attend the board meeting in person, because my modem was malfunctioning on my computer. And so I think the minutes should reflect that Director Lee was in, it shouldn't reflect that I left the meeting at any point and then came back. I was there the entire time, participating by listening. Couldn't talk to you, but I was listening. Could I recommend that be changed?
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, before
Yeah.
he makes a decision on this, so just so that the committee members are aware, by taking the action that Director Lee has requested, then it will be shown that she in fact voted in favor of all of the motions that she was not able to vote on, because her absence will not be recorded. So that is a consideration for the committee to look at. I believe there was about half a dozen motions that were passed or dealt with, voted on rather, while she was unable to participate. So you should be aware of that implication in dealing with this matter.
But I don't think it's accurate to say that I wasn't there. And I did join the meeting at the very end, and we reviewed those motions that didn't get my input. So we had a second chance and we voted to review them and vote on them again. So I didn't miss anything. I didn't intentionally leave my seat. My modem packed up, and
Can I make a suggestion? Make a suggestion, and Tom, maybe you could clarify whether it's a valid suggestion, and that is that it just say, rather than Director Lee left the meeting, Director Lee was unable to participate in the meeting due to technical difficulties. And then
yes, we can certainly
down where you have the.
Yeah, we can certainly put in some language to that effect. That's not a problem.
I would
then,
appreciate that.
That way,
it doesn't change the voting then.
Correct.
Well, we did vote on
voting.
We did vote on those issues that I couldn't speak to, but I was participating the whole time. Listening is participating, even if I couldn't be heard. I was still there, and it should just record that. It should just record that I experienced technical difficulties and joined the meeting towards, and was able to vote on all the issues. I didn't miss any of the issues in voting, so it just shouldn't reflect that I wasn't there.
What if it said Director Lee was unable to fully participate in the meeting because of technical difficulties, and then later, when it comes to the other statement, that it says that Director Lee's technical difficulties were resolved.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can certainly do that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Okay.
That would be more accurate. Thank you.
All right. So I would suggest that as an amendment, and if you want to, because it's a correction to the minute, do we need to move it? Or just
I would move that with respect to the notation in the minutes that Director Lee left and came back, that the minutes reflect that Director Lee experienced technical difficulties with her audio and remained in the meeting but could not be heard until the end of the meeting. So whenever I came in at the end with audio, and we voted on those issues.
Okay, could we leave the wording, well, this is a question to our corporate staff. Can we leave the wording as a hybrid between what you're saying now, Brendan, and what I said? I think mine was shorter. Leave that to staff to just, you know the intent.
Okay.
And we can assume that it will be changed, it will be corrected, and we can adopt the minutes.
Thank you.
Is there anybody opposed to that? Okay, we're going to move adoption of the minutes then.
Move adoption as amended.
Already. Okay, a seconder.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. Business arising from the minutes. Public considerations, there are none. Chair's report. Nothing of note. And then we go on to development variance permit application under staff reports. Lamentage.
Move receipt of report.
Second.
Okay, this is in area D. Okay, on receipt, is there a seconder?
Director Anderson, seconded.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And John will speak to this, Mr. Chair.
Sometimes I'd just like to let everybody know that sometimes the individual director's volume drops right off, almost inaudible. And then comes to Mr. Second, Director Anderson. Okay, who did you say was going to speak to this? Dave?
John Neal.
Okay, thank you. John, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. An application has been received to allow the proposed construction of a 111 square meter, 3-bay garage addition to an existing single-family dwelling. The proposed addition is designed to be joined to the existing dwelling by a breezeway and located as close as 3.6 meters from the rear property line. The zoning specifies that the minimum setback requirements for buildings and structures shall be 7.5 meters from the rear lot line. The variance is said to be required due to the designer's misinterpretation of the zoning bylaw, whereby Marina Road was mistakenly perceived as the front lot line. And given this misinterpretation, the design would have conformed to the side yard setback. Now, if the side yard was in fact Marywood Road, but in fact Marywood Road is the front yard, so it's caused confusion. One yard has been misinterpreted for a second yard, and that's why the proposed design does not meet the yard requirements. Now, a review of the garage addition indicates that the addition will impact the view of a number of the neighbouring properties, and responses of non-support have been received from 11 of the 15 neighbouring properties that were circulated before the variance was considered. Concerns have been expressed regarding the massing of the proposed structure and the potential damage to surrounding vegetation, and also the potential for excessive noise generation. Staff have examined the request to determine if there are any options that may adhere to the setback and height requirements and to mitigate impacts on adjacent neighbours. With the proposal as presented, it appears difficult to conform. However, staff are hopeful that with some minor alterations, a design may be possible that will adhere to the required setback requirements. And given these considerations, the proposal to grant the requested variance to allow the garage addition to be constructed 3.6 meters from the rear lot line is not supportable, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it is being recommended that it be denied. And on discussion.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
We better receive the CAO's report.
Move receipt.
John's report. Okay, so two of them. Seconder.
We already have a motion to receive on the floor, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I was adding John to it, but go ahead. All right, so the motion to receive is on the floor. Anyone opposed? Okay. Brenda, did you want to speak to it, to the receipt or later?
Either way, whatever you want. I just want to report what I know about it.
Okay. Tom or Dave, where's the place for that to happen? Here or?
On receipt, probably.
Well,
okay, then on receipt, go ahead, Brenda.
I would just like to add, in addition to John Neal's remarks, that I received several phone calls and read the letters that were written in opposition to this proposal. And I measure public support not only on the basis of numbers, but on the basis on a Geiger counter of emotions. People are not only opposed to this, they are outraged by this. I mean, who needs a 3-bay garage that's bigger than my house attached to their house? It's not necessary. It's stuck in the middle of 3 houses that are already experiencing flooding because the Ministry of Highways has not provided a ditch in front of Marywood to take the water away. There's 3 houses right around this proposal that are already flooding and can't get any help with getting a ditch dug to take the water away. So now we're going to plunk another house in there. And I'd also like to advise the committee that one of the reasons, because I've been on the board for almost 3 decades, one of the reasons that our rural area tries to keep these setbacks in place is because fire trucks cannot get in between buildings that are all squished in together. So we normally get the Willow Point Volunteer Fire Department to fires down here, and usually, in my experience the past few years, houses burn to the ground before the fire department gets here. So we have not had any luck with fire as it is, and if we start putting housing and buildings so close together, we're going to have more fires, and we don't need that. So that's a reason why we have these setback requirements, and they should be taken seriously.
Okay, thank you, Brenda.
That's all I have to say.
So are you speaking in opposition to receipt or just comments?
That was just a comment. We can vote on receipt.
We'll go on. Somebody, I'd like you to, somebody to move receipt of John's report.
Move receipt.
All the trouble.
Yes, move receipt.
That's B, so I'll second B.
Okay.
Chairman, are we on item B or some other item? I'm sorry.
Well, I was
we haven't voted on receipt.
Yeah, I asked if there were any opposed, I believe, didn't I?
I thought you had, Mr. Chairman. So I'm not sure what the vote currently on the floor is.
I didn't see anybody opposed, so I said I would like to also, so this would be A1, move receipt of John Neal's report to the directors.
I think that's part of A, Mr. Chair. Staff often give verbal support for their CEO's report.
Okay, fine. If you're fine with it, I just wanted to acknowledge the amount of work John put into it.
I would happily move
I'm going
B,
on
though,
to B,
which speaks to the letters from neighbors.
okay, so this is the correspondence regarding the that they received. Okay, moved by Nova and seconded by
Lee.
Lee. Okay, and any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Is there any opposition? Is anybody opposed to B? Okay, that's passed. On to C. The committee recommend the development variance permit as presented be denied. We have a mover.
Yeah, so moved.
I'm
That was
just,
you, Gerald? So moved?
Yes.
I'm just
Wasn't
stalling.
that
I'm just stalling to let Director Lee take a first chance, but I would second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on C? Anyone opposed to C? It carries. Okay, item 2, Oyster Bay Lands First Nations Consultations.
We pulled
Mr.
this.
This was pulled till next month.
Oh, this was the one to pull until next
Yeah.
one, okay. Sorry, I was confused. I thought it was a totally different item being pulled. But obviously this was it, so it's next month. I'm not going to argue about that. Okay, so everything in there, A, B, and C is pulled till next month. All right, item 3, Electoral Area D, Black Creek, water from water meter replacement.
Yes, move receipt.
Second.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, Wolf will speak to this.
Okay, well.
Yes, good afternoon. Through the chair to the committee, this is a report with regards a replacement of water meters. A request that came from the Comox Valley Regional District to upgrade the existing water meters in Electoral Area D. They have a program, it's scheduled for the next year. Approximately 1,000 properties in the area are scheduled to have these meters replaced. The purpose of this replacement is due to this equipment reaching the life span, and also to improve the efficiency of the meter readers. We're recommending that the total cost of this project is estimated $300,000. The CBRD is recommended that out of these $300,000, $100,000 would be funded by the community war funds. And the request from the CBRD to our regional district is to contribute with $30,000 from the Electoral Area D community war funds for the project. It is expected that all these meters will be replaced by 2024. The rest of the funding, $200,000, will be by CBRD. So again, the recommendation by them is contribution of $30,000 for the Black Creek and Oyster Bay water system water replacement project.
Okay, thank you very much, Wolf. So that was receipt. Any further comment on receipt?
I could comment on it.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Director Grieve from the Comox Valley and myself are the Black Creek Oyster Bay Water Services Committee, and we are Services Committee, and we each have contributed an amount over and above the gas tax money that's going into this project. These meters were installed in 1992, so 27 years ago, and they're reaching the end of their lifespan. And also, as Wolfgang mentioned, the new systems are much more efficient for staff to read meters from the road and do it much more quickly and efficiently. So Area C contributed an additional $45,000, and Area D is contributing $30,000 for our share of this project.
Okay, thank you. All right, so on receipt, anybody opposed? All right, then we move on to item B. The committee recommends a financial contribution.
Move B.
Moved and seconded, Nova, and discussion. All those, sorry. Hard to get away from that. Anybody opposed? Hearing none, that carries. Electoral Area administration, item 4, grant and aid authority. Gerald, I understand you have a motion you'd like to make?
Yeah, I'd like to move that we defer this to the next electoral area meeting.
Second.
Okay, motion to defer. That would be the entire item. Any discussion? Well, there isn't any discussion. All those, anybody opposed? Sorry. Okay, it carries. It will be deferred till the next meeting, which is a month from now. Who's First Nation addition to reserve? Receive a report.
Move receipt.
Is there a move?
Second.
Is there a second? Anybody opposed?
So, Mr. Chair, Tina will speak to this for us.
Pardon me?
Tina will speak to this for us.
Okay. Did I ask, Dave, that you introduce Tina? I don't know that all of us have ever met her.
I think we introduced Tina at the board meeting, at the last board meeting.
Oh, did we? Okay. I'm sorry, Tina. Somehow. All right, welcome. Go ahead. You have to speak to this report.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, David, CAO. I would like to first recommend that that the report from the CEO be received. That would be you guys. Sorry about that. That the Clackahoos First Nation has been they're nearing the end of their ATR process, addition to reserve process, and Indigenous Services Canada is looking for requesting a letter for support or no objection, and discussions with the staff at Clackahoos First Nation, it was deemed that this parcel of land has already been purchased by a number company by Clackahoos First Nation, and they would like to add this to their reserve so it could be under their jurisdiction and governance. And this parcel of land has a historical meaning and significance to the First Nation. So this is why they would like to have jurisdiction and governance over this parcel.
Okay, thank you very much.
One thing I may add,
so
Mr. Chair, just want to add, Mr. Chair, if I can. This report is kind of unique, as it was referred both to Electoral Area Services and First Nations. It went to First Nations, and First Nations had a recommendation that a ATR policy be created, and so that is going to the board today, I believe. So just wanted to add that in there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Okay, so we're still on receipt. Anybody opposed to receipt? Actually, I would have one comment, if you would allow me, as the chair, before I take the non-vote.
Yes.
I am just wondering why the lack of a policy suggests that we should write a letter of support. It could have just as easily meant that we write a letter of non-support or a letter of no recommendation or any of a number of things. It seems from reading the information from the First Nations Committee that the only reason we're reporting it is because we don't have a policy. And, you know, that doesn't seem like a reasonable way to do business. Perhaps it could be put off until we do have a policy. Done as a one-off and then a policy.
Yep, Mr. Chair, it's certainly within the authority of the committee or the board to do so. Just a staff recommendation that we see no reason to not support it. But if the committee or the board feels that's inappropriate, absolutely, that's within your jurisdiction to do so.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Okay. The reason I bring it up, sure, just one sec. The reason I bring it up is because I think generally when we have had addition to reserve issues come before us, and there haven't been many, but there have been a few, they usually come forward with a report from staff telling us the implications of removing a parcel from the regional district tax base. What services would be affected, what the taxation would be that's affected, all of the different things, you know, will more things have to happen, less things have to happen. But we would get that, you know, sort of Cole's notes from the staff of the regional district before we would move forward with a yay or nay. And that isn't happening here. And so I'm just wondering, that's sort of a divergence from our usual procedures.
Well, that's partially accurate. There wasn't much direction to staff in terms of what the board or committee wanted. I think Tina has done a good job in trying to find any issues if they exist. I think tax implications are minimal at best. I'm not sure I put Mike on the spot, but you know, maybe he's able to speak to this briefly, but I don't think there is likely many tax implications to this for Area B. But if there's other issues, by absolutely, we're happy to take any resolutions. But there wasn't a heck of a lot of direction for Tina to create a report. So she's done her best meeting with them, trying to identify any possible issues. But if there's further things that the committee would like information on, we're happy to receive that.
Okay. Are there others that had, nobody, did you say you wanted to speak? Okay,
yes, thank you. Yeah, I think deferring this further will render our comment just utterly irrelevant. We got referred on this back in the summer. It's been, you know, many months now. As I shared with the committee previously, when this first did come to our attention, I have no concerns whatsoever. I was aware of this, you know, many months ago when I was afforded a courtesy call by Clahoose. It is one waterfront property of dozens and dozens and dozens on the island. So from a tax-based perspective, it's negligible. And if it is of concern, it would be of concern to me and my residents, and I have none. It is a completely raw land piece of property with no servicing on it whatsoever, and not in a neighborhood that has any potential or any existing potential services that it could connect to, like, you know, acute cove sewer. There's nothing here at all. So it would certainly be developed by Clahoose, I would expect, in a way that the current reserve, you know, would be from a service perspective. And if there was going to be, you know, arrangements with solid waste or with fire, we'd get there when we get there. But in terms of water and sewer and anything like that and internal infrastructure, I trust that would be handled entirely by the nation. I think this is just the era to be supporting these kinds of things. Squirrel Cove is clearly the heart of their traditional use area in the last 100 years, being their primary use area, and certainly for thousands before that. I see no reason why this committee or the board would do anything other than support it wholeheartedly, and that would be my wish. And I did also just want to say, sorry, I don't remember Dave introducing Tina before. I did have the chance to meet her in person briefly when we happened to both be in the building. I understand she's our new First Nation liaison coordinator. Sorry, I don't know her formal title. But if you wouldn't mind another reintroduction, because I don't think I've missed a meeting and don't remember it, and just really want to extend a warm welcome to Tina.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. We did introduce Tina at the board, so but happy to do it again. Tina is our new First Nations Relations Coordinator. That's a role that the committee has supported on a part-time basis. So Tina's with us 3 days a week. She comes from the Comox First Nation. She worked there for several years. And Tina's been here, I guess, about a month and a half. We're really happy and excited to have her. And Tina's more than happy to expand on some of her history if the committee would like to know some of her background, but she obviously has an extensive work history working with First Nations.
Okay, thank you for that. It is appreciated by me anyway. If any new person gets hired to the regional district, if we get introduced to them formally so that we know we're getting an email from.
Yeah, just on that, Mr. Chair, because I know this comes up all the time, and it's actually a bit of an uncomfortable position for staff, and the board actually voted to not do introductions, not to be, too technical on it, but the board did not support a motion to introduce new staff members as they came along. So anyways, but happy to obviously introduce any new staff.
Okay, well, I certainly don't remember that motion.
I do.
Or ever voting on it, but if you say so, hey, I'm not going to argue with you. I just think it's a matter of courtesy to let people know who people are. Like I said,
and again,
if I get an email.
Yeah, and again, we did that at the board, so.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I believe you're still on receipt of this report.
Pardon me?
On receipt of this
Sorry,
report.
Tom, you broke up, Tom.
Mr. Chairman, I believe the motion to receive this report is still before the committee.
Okay. Anybody opposed to receipt? Okay, passed. Item B.
I would move B as presented, that the committee recommend that a letter of support to the addition to reserve application by the Clues First Nation be provided to Indigenous Services Canada.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any opposition? It's passed. Okay, financial assistance, Oyster River Volunteer Fire.
Move receipt.
6.
Second.
Receipt of the CAO's report. Any discussion? Anyone opposed?
I have a question.
Sorry. Go ahead, Nova.
Is the Oyster River Volunteer Fire Rescue Association in any way supported by or funding by either regional districts? Because I know we can't give grant and aids, to our fire department, for instance. For that reason.
I can answer that if you want me to.
Sure.
Okay, so the Oyster River Volunteer Fire Rescue Society, it's not an association, is a nonprofit group that supports the fire department. It is not funded. There's a separate function that funds the service, the Oyster River Fire Rescue Service. And this is not that. This is for the society. So it's a separate.
So just some clarity on that, Director Lee. The email that we got came from Ian Emery, the Oyster River Fire Rescue Association. So
okay, I stand corrected, but it is a registered nonprofit.
Yes, all good.
So then I have no problem providing a grant and aid if that is acceptable, but I'm curious to know the relationship then, because I wonder if there isn't value in other fire departments creating a parallel nonprofit for these reasons. Does the Oyster River Volunteer Fire Rescue Association and the fire department work hand in hand, or are they entirely separate units? Does anyone know?
They work as separate. They elect their own fire chief every couple of years. The association is the community link to the fire department. So they elect the chief. The chief actually gets hired and works on staff at the regional district and provides the core services of fire and rescue operations. And the society does a lot of fundraising, hot dog sales and that kind of thing to raise extra funds for extra things that aren't provided in the service function. So they've raised funds for things like Jaws of Life and night vision goggles for fires, and this is for a CAD unit, which is a communications unit inside the trucks that will go out to a fire and will locate the fire quickly. And because in our rural areas in Black Creek, Oyster Bay, we have not very well signed addresses sometimes, and they can drive around too long to find an address. And so this has GIS that'll pinpoint the address and communicate with the emergency dispatchers. So it's an optional piece of equipment that the association is raising money for.
It just seems like an interesting kind of workaround parallel organization that would qualify for funds that the fire department wouldn't qualify for all kinds of reasons. And I wonder if that's something that all of our fire departments might set up an auxiliary association.
Well, just so you know that this isn't a workaround, that this fire association is, they were the ones who did operate the fire department at one point. And then regional district took it over because of municipal insurance and fire service. What do you call it? The Office of the Fire Commissioner required that, and the insurance required that we have more hands-on at the regional district level, at the board level, over the volunteers that were working for the fire department. So they took over the operation of the service and hired the chief and the deputy chief on staff at the CVRD. So the CVRD runs, like the Oyster River Fire Rescue Association was always there from the beginning, 40 years ago, the beginning of the fire department. And it wasn't until about 5 years ago that the requirement from the fire commissioner and the insurers was to have their chief and deputy chief on our staff to be responsible for overseeing the fire department's financial management and whatnot. But this is something different. This is the association that is that has always been there, and they have never worked around anything. They're raising extra funds for the fire department to make it, to keep their department as responsive and as as engaged as possible with the public.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question, Director Henderson?
No, I really appreciate that history. It's very interesting, and I don't mean in any way disrespect to the Rescue Association. It sounds like they do great work. It seems to me that Cortez could set up the Friends of the Cortez Island Fire Department and apply for grants and aid, and the policy of not providing grants and aid to organizations that have services. It just seems like a way of providing grants and aid to organizations effectively that don't qualify. I'm not trying to get in the way of this one, but I wonder going forward whether this is honoring the intent.
I would be looking into why we don't at the regional district have staff from the fire departments on our staff. Why the fire commissioner didn't say the same thing to Cortez and Sayward and Quadra, that, hey, we need oversight on, on the board. Working for the board as staff. I don't know why we had to do it in the CVRD and SRD didn't have to, but that change didn't happen up north here.
Well, it's a patchwork quilt, Director Lee. So some of the fire departments want to remain independent. It's not that they're not welcome, and I think there's many advantages to them being on the regional district, but there's some reluctance on a number of them. So throughout the province, it's a patchwork quilt, but they're, yes, more than welcome to, and again, I think there's many advantages for them to join the regional district, but they choose not to.
Okay.
Just for clarification, the report by the Fire Commissioner addressing the situation in the Comox Valley Regional District was not commissioned until after the split, so the SRD was not part of that evaluation that was done.
Oh.
And I just would like to say as a chair that this being a grant made, a financial issue, that I'm sure that it has been thoroughly reviewed by Mike Harmston, CFO, prior to coming before the board. So I think the legality of it as to whether or not it qualifies should not be in question at all.
So, Mr. Chairman, you do have a motion for receipt still on the floor.
Okay, all those not opposed, anybody opposed to receipt? Okay, seeing none, carried. Item B.
Move B.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, anybody opposed? Carried.
Mr. Chair, if I can just add a little comment to your last comment there. It isn't the CFO's job to vet these. We are basing it on the information provided to us. So based on those, we make sure it meets the criteria, but we're not vetting. These are recommendations from the area directors, and we have a high level of screening that we do based on the information provided, but it's not like there's staff recommendations that say, hey, we vetted these things and they're all great. These are recommendations from the directors.
Yeah, just to be clear on what you're saying, to clarify what I wasn't saying that he was vetting them, but that he is checking them to make sure that they're all legal and they meet the criteria. And I believe that.
Well, we have a disclaimer in the report. It don't based on the information provided to us. So again, don't forget these recommendations for awards come from the directors. So if you read the report, we have a disclaimer on them that we're doing an analysis that's limited based on the information provided to us. We're not going beyond that. So.
Okay. Here, I thought I'd give Mike a good kudo, and
I don't think he wants it.
That's all right.
Yeah, no. I don't think he wants the ownership of the liability of these, to be honest with you.
No, I certainly wasn't talking about liability. Okay, so on to item J, bylaws. Bylaw number 9495, OCP and rezoning for Shelling on receipt.
Move A, receipt of CO report.
I think, Mr. Chair, there's a motion that's been provided that Edie can pull up.
Yes, I have provided a motion.
Would it preclude receiving the report?
I think we just received it, didn't we? Or did we? No. All right.
Yeah, we did. I didn't call a vote on it, but okay. Anybody opposed to receipt? Seeing none, there's a motion, a subsequent motion that says that all public hearings in Area C be postponed until BC provincial health orders allow for indoor public gatherings with participation by the entire community being made possible.
Second.
Mr. Chairman,
Reason, if I may.
do we have a mover?
Yes.
Yeah.
Whose motion was this? Is this Brenda's motion?
Yeah, it should be my motion because the
Yeah.
chair isn't supposed to make motions.
Correct, and I'll second.
So, yeah, BLGW.
Okay.
Good.
Gerald, motion. You got that, Tom?
Yes, thank
Yep.
you.
Okay. Okay, so that's the motion, and the reason that it's here is to save us having to go through the entirety of this report at a time when we are going to be looking at a few months before we could possibly go back. And I think, you know, there were some astute comments made by both the delegation and staff concerning possibly, you know, just grab a month, September. Things change and there's an ability to do something different. Then we look at it then and we make a decision on it then. But for now, this would definitely be, I believe, totally in order. I mean, we can't meet indoors anyway, and there is no way that as the director for the area, I am going to suggest that we have a virtual public hearing on something as major as this particular application. So there you go. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Yes.
Who was that? Sorry.
Director Anderson.
Okay, go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I would like us to consider B, C, D, and E, which are about the nature of bylaw 94 and 95, and then discuss the nature of postponing public hearings separately so that at least this gets the amendments that it needs. With regards to what's on the screen before us, I can support, I think, what is the spirit of not doing a public hearing on Shelling now. I cannot support what I see in front of us because for two reasons. One is it delays all public hearings. So if there's a wharf or some small, like Quadra has had, I think, 3 or 4 public hearings, you know, in these new COVID times. I understand attendance has been abysmally poor, but I don't know that you would want to postpone everything. I really understand the interest in postponing this really large one. The second reason that I have concern is that I don't know, I don't have any confidence that we will be able to meet indoors with the entire community for years to come. Now, I really hope I'm wrong. But with the variance, I'm not going to repeat everything I said to delegation, but I would certainly support the motion that said postpone the Shelling proposal, you know, and reconsider in August what public health orders look like for the fall. But I think this is far too blanket, and if we don't reconsider this at some future time, might be years out to squash all public hearings on Quadra. So I don't think that's supportable.
Comment, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Gerald.
Yeah, this motion is specifically Area C only, so it doesn't affect anybody else's public hearings. And the chair can always bring this back for reconsideration in the future if things were to change. So I think it's totally appropriate.
Question on the motion.
Question on the motion has been called. Is there anybody opposed?
Director Anderson opposed.
Okay, one opposed. Carries. Okay, so
Mr. Chair, where does that leave items B through E? Can we proceed with those, please?
I mean,
they're not related to public hearings.
I would argue, well, I would argue that they are.
they are what?
I would say they are related to the public hearing.
Yes, I would.
Don't they just update the bylaws and prepare them to go to public hearing whenever that is set by the board?
But well, there's no reason. So, sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Well, I mean, again, we all know this has gone on a long time. There's been comments back and forth, and I think there's likely edits, modifications potentially for the bylaw. I have no idea where it's going to go at this point, you know, based on all the communication we've received. So my humble opinion would be that it's related. I don't think anyone could tell where this bylaw is going to be at the end of the day based on the public input and comments and suggestions, potential modifications. So in my eyes, I think it's related. I don't think you're going to get anywhere by moving those.
Okay. And as the director for the area, I would fully agree with the CAO's comments. We can certainly bring these back prior to possible changes in whether or not we have public hearings in the future. It can be brought back, staff can do their work, and perhaps the applicant will be coming back with changes at the same time that we don't have before us now, and we'd have to reconsider them at that time. So I think it's best to just leave it. We've decided we're not going to have a public hearing. If we're not going to have a public hearing, then why are we going through the trouble of redoing the bylaw over and over and over again each time it comes forward? So moving on, that was perhaps, that would put us at item 2, 424 rezoning application to facilitate private moorage use of ground foreshore at Billy Goat Bay and an unnamed bay at Hamilton Island.
Move receipt.
Second.
Okay. Brenda, I think I'm going to ask that you take the chair and I step down.
Okay, I've got the chair.
Speak to this. Okay, thank you.
Any discussion on receipt?
Sorry, yeah, that's right.
Or any staff reports on receipt?
I would move receipt. I don't think that's happened yet. Of A.
Okay. Moved by Anderson, seconder.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, we do have a motion for receipt currently on the floor, moved by Director Wally, seconded by Director Lee, to receive the report.
Okay.
Yet to be voted on.
Question on receipt?
Question. Anyone opposed to receipt? Hearing none, it carries. Item D.
I understand we have
Chair.
staff to speak to this.
I have discussion on that.
Madam Chair, if you'd like, staff can speak to the report, and then maybe the director can, it might answer some questions that he has or comments, but if you'd like, staff can speak to this. Or not.
Okay, staff, who's speaking to it? John Neal?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Helmken Island is an access-only parcel, and it requires, therefore, the installation of a dock to provide access for the property owner to basically to land on the island, to make use of it as his property. And currently, the waters surrounding Helmken Island are zoned access to, which permit only navigational aids and shellfish harvesting. And therefore, the applicant requires a zoning amendment to Access 1 to provide for the creation of a dock at Billy Goat Bay, which is the east end of the island. And he had also asked for access at the another site at the west end of the island for a potential second dock, although he's not he's prepared not to require that second dock. So the amendment has circulated to various agencies and First Nations, and the Weebekam Nation have indicated that they would like a further meeting with the regional district to discuss the implications of placing the dock in the bay, as it's within their traditional area, and they have some concerns. The senior manager of community services and myself did meet with representatives of the Weebekam Nation some weeks ago, and they told us they would bring it to the chief, and a letter was provided to us a short time ago, which has been attached to the agenda for this morning's meeting, which you may have had a chance to review. We would recommend that any proposal to construct a dock at Billy Goat Bay be in accordance with the provincial general permission for the use of Crown land and private moorage policy, which would afford the upland property owner the right to install the residential dock and to access the property. But we are also prepared, obviously, to meet again with the First Nation to discuss the matter further, should that be the wish of the committee. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. And is there any further discussion from directors or questions?
Yes,
Director Abram?
Okay, so first of all, I have to go back to the staff report, and I believe there's some errors in the staff report right from the start. And that is that the original bylaw that was created as a shoreline zoning bylaw in 1990 and 1990 was the original. There were two zones for access, Access 1 and Access 2. Access 1 was strictly for private moorage. That was for private access to private property. Access 2 was zoned as the blanket zone for all waters in the rest of Area C, to basically force any applicant, no matter what the use was, to come forward to the community to be able to put it forward as, does this application in any way affect your use of the lands, whatever. That has been always the case. The only uses that were allowed in the Access 2 zone when it was created were parks and navigational aids. Now, originally we had put in shellfish harvesting, and we were told by the federal government in writing that they regulate shellfish harvesting and we don't regulate it at all, period. Took it out, no problem. We didn't want to regulate it. It was just the planners of the day felt that we needed to have a little more meat in the bylaw. Okay, well, parks and navigational aids is what it ended up as. So, I think, we need to have that original document brought forward, and I realize there's an amendment that shows as I think it's 1391 or 92, something like that, that shows in the current bylaw, but I don't know, I don't have that bylaw. Okay, and I guess one of my questions would be, who owns the upland? Is it all one giant island owned by one property owner, or is it subdivided up? I have no idea. The next comment is that I cannot in any way conceive of private moorage area of these sizes at either end of this island. This completely eliminates future uses of those bays. They're huge. They're like 5 hectares. You don't build a 5-hectare dock. I'm sorry. The dock that's drawn on the map is like a tenth of the size of the application. So That's just completely absurd as far as I'm concerned. I could never support that with Crown lands. There's this directive that has been talked about. We have already used, we were told that we had to give that general permission for moorage, and we have already used that in Open Bay and found it to be not applicable to things like this, where there was a humongous poured in place anchor out in the middle of the bay where people anchor their boats with chains going from it up to a dock from the land. And they were told, or the consultant was told, that they could use the general permissions provision. And in our discussions from planning staff with the province, that was not used. It was told that they needed to have a rezoning for Access 1 because it was permanent. So this, this application to me demonstrates that the collaboration that we used to have with our staff when applications were put forward, it now eliminates any of the consultation on the proposed use and the possible mitigating circumstances. There may very well have been ways that we could work around both ends of the island, or one end if they only want one end. But as the application sits, there's no way I could support this going forward. The AC1 zone that will cover the area of the docks and the anchoring systems, I have no problem with that. That's what all of the aquaculture industry does. That's what all of the logging industry does, what all of the tourism industry does. They get a lease for the area where they want the dock and where the anchor lines and anchors will be put. That's what they go and apply for, because that's what they're going to be charged for by the province. These things are not free. Okay, so this, if you look at it, it's a huge area. It's the whole bay, headland to headland. That is just not acceptable. That means nobody can use that bay without the permission of those people. And I don't know who these people are. And I don't even have a name or anything. So also it mentions boardwalks being put onto the structure, which, unless they're completely in the water, would not apply to the Access 1 zone at all. Access 1 zone is a marine zone. It is strictly for below the high tide mark. So if any part of these boardwalks is on land, then they would have to be applying for some other zone. What it may be, I have no idea. Some other zone for their structure that is on the upland. It could not be attached to the Access 1 zone. So I can't support the remainder of each of these two zone sizes or the other points that I already pointed out, like the boardwalk, etc. So I just, totally am against it. The other thing is, I didn't receive any notification from the WEWACOM that was mentioned. I'm sorry if you have attached that letter recently. I have not seen this. I did my agendas on Friday, and I don't know when, if the letter was on there then, I missed it. And sorry about that. But if it wasn't there then, I haven't seen it yet because I haven't read my agenda since then. So if the WEWACOM have problems, I'd like to know what they are. And in the interest of reconciliation, I'm working very hard with the WEWACOM and the WEWACI to have a government-to-government, quote-unquote, for us, relationship with those First Nations on all of these issues. And I would not want them to think that during the time when I'm trying to work with them on something, that something's going on behind their back to apply for something that they're not in favor of for some reason. I don't know what the reason is. And, you know, I will find that out afterwards. So I cannot support this moving forward at all.
Any other speakers? Anyone else want to speak to this issue?
Yes, Director Lee.
Yes, Director Anderson.
Yeah, just to Director Abram, the first time I went through the agendas, I didn't notice it either because it's item B. Usually there's just the CAO's report and then there's, you know, motions, but item B here is the attached WeWacom letter. So I didn't actually read that till this morning, but it very simply states that they have, you know, long-term interest there and want to meet with the board about this. And so my question through to staff then, I mean, that's a very simplified version of their letter, but it's a pretty straightforward to read. My question through to staff is there any, because I would like to meet their request, is there any recommendation about how we could go about doing this? Was this discussed when staff met with the WeWacom on this matter about how we would go about meeting board to board, or sorry, board to nation? Because I would like to be able to meet that request before we move forward on the proposal, and then also be able to address Director Abrams' other concerns. But how would staff recommend we meet with the nation if that is the will of the committee, which I hope it would be?
Okay, staff, do you have an answer?
Yeah, I think Annika or John can answer that.
Yeah, to the director. It's my understanding from the letter that we received that the request is for representatives from the WeWacom to meet again with staff. And that is what we have done once already, about, I think it was about a month or so ago. Yeah, I think it was about March 11th, where we had a very detailed conversation with respect to their interests and explained the proposal in detail to the representatives, which were then brought back to their board for further discussion. At this point, given the extent of the proposal, they would like to once again meet with staff to discuss what was brought up through the First Nation themselves. And so that is the request, and we were looking at arranging for another meeting, staff to staff, with the WeWacom to discuss the proposal, in hopes of then receiving a formal response from the First Nation with respect to how they would like the regional district to address this proposal.
Okay, I'm a little confused. On page 3 of the report, the staff report, it says there was no response from the WeWacom. The WeWakai responded saying that Helmkin Island forms part of the nation's crab harvesting area. So I don't have that letter that you're talking about that was sent in after this board agenda was published. But the staff report says that you're dealing with the WeWakai, not the WeWacom.
Madam Chair, on item 2, which is this rezoning application for private moorage, item A is the staff report. Item B is correspondence from the WeWacom First Nation, and it is attached there. I have no indication that it was attached late. And what I read at the bottom of the second paragraph of the letter from the WeWacom, and I defer to Annika because it actually isn't super clear whether they want to meet with staff or board. I assumed board, but that is my assumption. It says, while we recognize the efforts to of the applicant to address the nation's concern, the nation requests a meeting with the SRD, it doesn't say staff or board, to further understand and formalize what an engagement consultation process entails with the SRD. We hereby require no decision is made until a meeting is arranged. So I think at this point, the only thing to do is either defer this or refer it back to staff to ascertain whether another meeting with staff will meet their concerns, or whether they want to meet with the board or the committee to talk about the engagement consultation process so that their interests can be met before we make any further moves on this matter.
Madam
Okay,
Chair,
so
if I may,
Director,
And if I could,
this is Director Wally.
I'll put my hand.
Oh, Director Abram?
Yeah, I don't know. Gerald, did you have your hand up?
Gerald?
Otherwise, go ahead.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
You didn't. Okay, I thought I heard somebody.
That was myself,
I'm
Chair.
Oh. So Tom and then Director Abram.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just for the guidance of the committee, if you are thinking of deferring this matter on the basis that there is further discussion or consultation with the Weebacom or Weebacai, that would be appropriate. I would recommend that you actually receive the item and number in item B before you do that. So there's context for that. So that was my only comment regarding that. Thank you.
Okay, Director Abram?
First, yeah, if I may, I take that under advisement. But I would suggest that the letter is very clear that it's not staff, it's the board. And I am part of the board, and I would expect to be at the meeting with both First Nations if they both require a meeting. I don't know if it's one or the other or both. But as director for the area, we meet, government being me, and the government of the First Nation often. So, you know, I think that would be very, very strange to not have the political representation for the regional district for the area involved not be present, and you know, object to not being invited to the meeting. If it's, you know, staff are saying it's staff to staff when the letter says it's the board. So I do consider myself part of the board. So I, you know, will receive B, I guess, at some point, and when we do, then I'll have a subsequent to go along that.
Can I ask though, on the item B, I mean, there were other concerns before we got into the First Nations response to this proposal, that there's problems. You know, if the First Nations had not responded at all, then we still have problems with the proposal because it proposes to make both ends of the island, both bays, private moorage as a permitted use, and that's changing the zone in bylaw 1213 to exclude public use. And I don't think anyone's okay with that. There's 2 sheltered bays, and they can't be, you know, privately cut off from the public who need to moor there. I just, you know, I'm skeptical about the first and second reading at this point until we sort these things out and until we've consulted with the First Nations. So I think the whole issue should be same as the previous, the Shelnick one, should all be deferred until these items are worked out.
Okay, and that was actually, if I may, Madam Chair?
Sure, Director Abram.
Okay, so my motion was going to be that until we have met nation to board with the Weebacom and Weebacai First Nation and all of the land use zoning issues have been sorted out, that this item be deferred indefinitely. And I'm not going to set a time for the First Nations. They have their own timetables.
So the motion is to defer these items, A, B, C, and D, bylaw 424, to defer it indefinitely until we can consult further with Weebacai and Weebacom. And any further discussion? Is there a seconder?
Okay, if we can just let Edith catch up here and get it right. I had from Director Abram, until we have met with nation to board, we would Kai and we would come, and land use issues have been sorted out, that the item be deferred. Is that correct?
That's exactly it, Dave. Very good. Thank you.
Oops.
Did you say deferred indefinitely?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
We would Kai and we would come. And land use issues have been sorted out, that the item be deferred indefinitely. That was Director Abram.
Okay, is there a seconder for this motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Director Anderson?
One question of the mover. This letter is from Wewakam. Is there any indication from Wewakai that they want to meet, or is this just an extension of an offer? And then my second question is, it's not clear to me in their letter whether they say they want to meet with the SRD. It's not clear whether that's staff or board. Staff are saying it's staff, and Abram is saying it's board. It's not clear to me either way. So I'm thinking it might be more appropriate to follow the lead of the nation on what they want to do. And if indeed they think that meeting with staff is sufficient, that we would not force them into a meeting with the whole board to the whole nation. So I would feel more comfortable with a motion that just said, refer back to staff and director for the area to determine the nature of the meeting and defer it until such time.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, may I speak?
Yes. John Neal?
Yes, thank you. I have the letter from the Wewakai in front of me, and I'll just read out the relevant paragraph here. The Wewakai Nation has no comment at this time regarding this application being issued. Please note that this no comment letter is specifically for this application and is without prejudice to all future consultation with our nation regarding other applications within our traditional territory, including the renewal or any alteration of this application. If any now or future ocean ground disturbance, please contact Wewakai Nation in the Helcon Bays. This is our traditional crab harvesting area. Madam Chairman.
And if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I know that this is their traditional area, and Wewakam's traditional area, and I am not going to step on toes between the two most powerful bands on this coast, and suggest that we're not going to. We'll take your no comment letter as being okay, as opposed to maybe we want to talk some more, because they don't know that they don't have time. As everybody knows, First Nations are strapped for what's the word they use all the time?
Capacity.
Capacity. They're strapped for capacity, and they don't have time to go through every one of these applications in total detail, nor did they have time necessarily to consult between each other, because a lot of times the overlap is a very serious overlap, and a lot of times it's a very loose overlap. In this situation, I would say it's going to be a very strict overlap because of where it is. This is very definitely area claimed by both nations. So I'm not comfortable with Director Anderson's suggestions. I like the motion the way it reads, and we should leave it as it is and vote on it. It's a deferral motion.
It's a question, not a suggestion, Director Abram. Okay. Thank you for answering.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Abram or staff, don't you think that since this is a land use bylaw, bylaw 424, that it would be more appropriate for representatives from the First Nations to meet with the Electoral Area Committee first, so we can make amendments to the bylaw and then bring it to the board? I mean, why would the board be voting on land use issues in Area C? That's not.
Well, that would be fine. That would be fine with me. The
I think
motion doesn't say where it's going. It just says it's being.
It says until we've met nation to board. And I think we should, you know, until the electoral areas have an opportunity to hear from the Wew'wakam, we, you know, that the electoral areas will be the ones meeting with them at first, because we're still working on this bylaw.
Okay,
It's not
so
ready.
then
Not ready to go to the board.
The word board could be changed to Electoral Area Services Committee.
Yeah, that's where it needs to be. To begin with, they may want to meet with the board later on, but right now, I think we need to get this bylaw in order.
Okay, so if, Edie, if you wouldn't mind changing that to Electoral Area Services Committee. In the end, the Electoral Area Services Committee directors will be considered the board as far as voting goes. So.
Is Wew'wakam spelled correctly there?
No.
No, it's K-A-I.
K-A-I. Okay.
Okay, so we have the motion until we've met nation to east with Wew'wakam and Wew'wakai, and land use issues have been sorted out on this item, that it be deferred indefinitely.
Question on the motion?
Okay, so question has been called. Any further discussion? None. All in favor, or anyone opposed? Hearing none. Carried. And I'll hand the chair back to you, Director Abram, if you want it.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, it's a report from you.
I don't have a.
So we're
okay.
Item L.
Let me just find where. We're at Director's Report Refuge Code Boardwalk. There we go. Okay, that's item L.
Yep.
So that the March report from myself be received, that would be the first motion, I guess.
Move receipt.
And the directors provided a motion for.
Okay.
Let's give Edie a sec to pull it up.
So I believe.
Can I say the agenda, please?
I think Edie's got to pull up the motion.
All right. Okay.
Okay, and then the item would be the motion, I believe.
Yeah, now if Edie can pull up the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I believe the motion to receive should be dealt with ahead of any subsequent motions.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
So, Mr. Chairman, you have a motion to receive the report currently on the floor, and no vote has been taken on it.
Question on
Are there
receipt.
any opposed? Are there any opposed? Okay.
Move the motion as presented.
Second.
That staff provide a report.
Excuse me. Dave, was that the motion that?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
We decided,
Yep.
because there was an email, is that in the
Yep.
item?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All
On the
right,
Refuge
so
Cove Boardwalk.
so staff will provide a report on that email, suggestions or whatever, and bring it
Correct.
back to the next EAC?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, any discussion? Anybody opposed? Seeing none, carried. That would bring us down to the most important part, termination.
No termination.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Anybody opposed? Great. So we've got an hour